Greetings, my fellow decrepits, invalids, and other sick people. I hope you're doing well today and that you're fighting the good fight. Alright, so 2 years ago on Christmas Day, my life turned completely upside down by a condition the doctors have diagnosed me with known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Some of you who have been following my YouTube channel may be a little bit more up to date on how things are going, but I realized it has been a while since I've done an official update video, and so I thought I would make one today and let you guys know how I'm doing. And I'm expecting a few more family and friends to tune into this one. And so I'm going to try and share about how my life is right now on a little bit more intimate level. So the big question then is, well, how am I doing? Well, I'm kind of up and down. I've been worse and I've been better. I can't exactly complain about where I'm at, but I'm also hoping for greater improvement. That being said, my symptoms are still very real and they still affect my day-to-day life. Now, although everything is not sunshine and rainbows, let me share a few things where I feel like I have seen improvement over the last year in comparing myself now to where I was a year ago. So a year ago, I needed help watching the kids pretty much daily. I really did not have enough energy to be able to do that on my own. And now I'm at a point where I'm watching them pretty much daily on my own. I do get help from my parents twice a week to make sure I can get a really good nap in at least a couple times a week. But overall, I'm doing a lot of that on my own, which is really exciting. In regards to my naps, and for those of you who don't know, I've had to take a daily nap for the last pretty much almost the entire 2 years. And anyone who knows me, I've never really been much of a nap person, and I physically am unable to go through a day without a nap at this point. Now, a year ago, my naps would consume anywhere from 4 to 5 hours of my day, spent either entirely sleeping or mostly sleeping and a little bit resting. I'm now to a point where I am pretty much only 2 to 3 hours max in bed. So still a big chunk of change, but it's also a large improvement from where I was a year ago. So automatically, I'm reducing the amount of time spent in bed, which is great. Last year, I really needed a lot of help making meals, and now I feel like I'm able to, on occasion, help around the house with in terms of food prep or even just try to on occasion make a very simple dinner. So it definitely feels like I've made progress in that area as well. And I'm also able to do a few more chores around the house. Sometime last year, I decided that every day I was going to try and do dishes. And so I've pretty much stuck to that. That has been my one chore. But then some days I'm able to help a little bit with laundry. And if I'm really feeling good, I might be able to throw in one extra thing in there too. So I definitely feel like I'm getting little pieces of my life back, but nothing extraordinary. But in general, it's been really cool and really encouraging for me to be able to see the improvement in all these different areas. It's so small. But for me, it almost feels like these huge steps forward. I'm hoping that a year from even now, I'll be able to look back and see even more improvement in these areas. But not everything has improved for me. Certain things like exercise, specifically walking, is very up and down for me. I try to get out a few times a week and go for a short little walk. A half a mile is pretty much my limit. If I go beyond half a mile, I will likely come back and have symptoms. And there's even certain days if I go walk a half a mile, I come back and have symptoms. And so there's this very fine line of I'm trying to I'm trying my best to not be sedentary with a condition that is very sedentary in its nature. And so I'm trying my best to try and get up and move when I can. But like I said, there's just a very thin line there between feeling decent and feeling really, really bad. It's just trying to manage my energy levels. And so I really hope to continue to try and find ways to improve my endurance and my ability to do light exercise. Now, in terms of working, this one I would say has also sadly taken a dip this year. So I have been working for about a year and a half now for my aunt's accounting company. She's been very gracious and been willing to work with me and around my health issues. And so at my highest point, I think I was working around 15, yeah, probably around 15 hours a week. The last 6, 7 months, I've probably been more along the lines of 3 to 6 hours a week, like almost nothing. Now, some of that is the reality that I am now able to be at home with my kids, and so I've sort of become the stay-at-home parent. There's also the reality of my health just simply doesn't allow. the act of getting out of the car or getting into the car, driving there and doing the work is very draining on me. The physical side of getting there and then the mental side of actually doing the work. That's an area where I hope to be able to improve in the coming year, is to get in a few more hours at work. And while I'm talking about this, my aunt did not sponsor me in any way, but I want to give a shout out to her business. She does a lot of accounting and a lot of work with taxes for small and large businesses. So if you have any need of services like that, please reach out to Overall Office Solutions. I'll leave a link down below in case you're interested. But she does great work, and she's been like I said, she's been very gracious to me and allowing me to work for her very part time with all my health issues. So anyway, back to my health. So like I said, my doctors have officially diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, I always have to emphasize this is so much more debilitating than it sounds. Chronic fatigue syndrome is a real disease. It is extremely debilitating, and it is so much more than just being tired. There's a lot of overlap with long COVID in terms of symptoms and how it presents itself. The primary component of chronic fatigue is that your fatigue, basically, you're always tired, your sleep is never refreshing, and oftentimes the fatigue is to the point where it keeps you in bed or keeps you on the couch. This year, I would say, has been much more on the couch than in bed, so that's been a positive. But that still doesn't mean I'm doing a whole lot. And this fatigue gets worse after physical and mental activity, which is the only two kinds of activities there are. And then what happens though is once you cross that threshold of your energy limits, then a whole host of other symptoms can kick in. And those are what vary for different people with chronic fatigue. For myself, once I cross that threshold, then I start getting into things like nausea, my body twitches or body shakes, sweating, some nausea, diarrhea sometimes, and then just kind of feeling out of it, like almost like I'm in a daydream or something. My goal is always to try and keep myself in a spot where I'm decent. I'm trying to avoid those symptom flare ups. And so that's what becomes very difficult. But I feel like I've done a lot of work this year to kind of try and understand my limit a little bit better and to monitor it. I don't feel like I've crashed as many times or crashed as hard. There have definitely still been several, but I feel like I'm getting a little better at managing it. It's hard to prioritize everything in my life to try and make sure that I'm not going too far. And the biggest reason for that is because once I crash, it's not a simple like I'm better the next day. Typically, if I have a crash in my symptoms and I've gone past my energy limit, I will typically spend anywhere from a few days to a few weeks in bed recovering. And so far, I've yet to figure out any kind of pattern to that crash, other than I just simply did too much. And so, and that's a very gray line to walk, but I feel like I'm getting better at trying to figure it out. So one thing I do to try and prevent those crashes is I typically try to stick to this one activity per day rule. Now, these activities for this rule, they're usually something along the lines of like, I'm going to go for a walk, a doctor's appointment, a family get together, or maybe I'm doing that one extra chore around the house. But I can only do one of these extra activities because 90% of the time, if I do that one extra activity, if I do more than that one extra activity, I'm most likely going to regret it later that day or later that week. So how has this one activity rule affected my life? Well, it affects it in a lot of ways. A few examples would be number one, in terms of going to church, I have rarely made it to church this year, which has been very discouraging and frustrating, but I hope to be able to make it back here soon. It also means that I don't get to play with my kids as often or for as long as I would like to. I've missed out on many different family get togethers, and it also means I really just don't make it outside of the house very often because every activity outside of the house is a risk of me getting more symptoms. And we're now at a point where we are kind of relying on me as the main person in the house. And so making sure I don't crash becomes a priority because if I crash, then I need help watching the kids. And so, to anyone watching who knows me personally, if there's been a time this year where I've said no to you or I haven't been able to attend something, just know it is most likely either because I'm following my one activity rule or because I'm already not feeling good. It's nothing personal. It's just I'm having to learn how to manage my symptoms, and I'm learning how to manage my energy. It's nothing personal. It's just me trying to take care of myself and take care of my family. And so I'm doing the best I can, and I really appreciate your patience with me. So now I want to talk about a few things I've learned about my health over this last year, because there's been a few things that have helped me get a better idea of the full picture. So I want to start with noise sensitivity. So I think in the back of my mind, I kind of always wondered if this was a problem, but it really became apparent to me this last summer. My family and I went to go see Lord of the Rings, which is like my favorite movie of all time. Love Lord of the Rings. They were replaying it in theaters, so it was like the, I don't know, 22nd anniversary or something like that. So went into theaters, and within 15 minutes of being in the movie theater, with all the noise and the lights, I started feeling nauseous. I started sweating. And I started just generally feeling really unwell. And after 30 minutes in the movie, I had to leave. I ended up going and sitting in the car, and then I ended up calling my mom and having her come pick me up because it's a long movie, and so I was either going to wait in the car or go home. So with that though, I've learned that noise sensitivity does bother me. Oh, and one more thing on that. So after that movie and how I didn't feel good after that movie, after that I spent the next 3 days in bed. Now I know if you're just hearing me say that, that makes no sense. Like it doesn't make sense to me either. It doesn't make sense to walk into a movie theater and that the noise bothers you so much that I'm stuck in bed with symptoms for 3 days. It's very weird. But that's kind of what I've learned. And really, that's a great example of how quickly I can go downhill, and it explains why I have to monitor myself so closely and be very careful with the activities that I engage in. And so, with that, to any of my church family who might be listening, that's one of the biggest things that is holding me back right now from being able to attend in person, is simply the fact that the noise and the stimulation is extremely hard for me. It doesn't even have to be all that loud sometimes, but like the noise from the speakers at church can really start to make me feel nauseous or twitchy really fast within a service, and so that's held me back from going. And to anyone who knows me, I spent over a decade being a drummer. I love I love loud music. I love playing the drums. Noise has never been an issue for me. And so whatever is wrong with my body right now, there's something where it doesn't like all the extra stimulation. And so what becomes difficult for me is that if I go to something on like a Sunday and it ends up giving me all these symptoms, and then I spend the next 3 days in bed, well, not only does that make it hard for me, but it means I have to get extra help around the house, and it also means that there's going to be a bigger weight forced upon my wife at home, because then she has to pick up the slack that I've been doing. So that's what's difficult about where I am, is I'm just constantly trying to keep myself in this little like narrow lane where my symptoms are manageable. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that you can understand where I'm coming from. A few more things we've learned. We've learned that my vitamin D has been very up and down all year long, so we're definitely supplementing for that right now. I've also been getting vitamin D injections. Very hard to get good vitamin D when you are stuck inside all the time. During the summer, especially, I tried as best I could to get outside, get some fresh air, go for a walk, and I still try to walk. But I'm at a point where 5 or 10 minutes of walking outside is about all I can do, and so it makes getting natural vitamin D pretty hard. But so we are working on that. Now let me touch on the anxiety subject, because I know this comes up a lot with people when I start talking to them, and when I describe my symptoms, anxiety comes up a lot. So this last year, my doctor and I and a counselor, we spent about 7 or 8 months looking into anxiety. And after those 8 months of counseling, my counselor said that there was not enough evidence for him to even diagnose me with generalized anxiety, which is like the most basic level of anxiety. He basically said either you're hiding it really well or it's just not there at all. And where my perspective is, and the perspective of my wife and my parents and just the people that know me best, our perspective the whole time was really, I don't really think, none of us think I'm a very anxious person. I don't feel very anxious. Despite all this going on, I actually feel, very at peace. I have a ton of faith in my Savior and how he has provided for us and taken care of us. I have a great support system around me with family and friends. We don't really think that's the issue, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Now, with that said, my doctor is still monitoring it, and he likes to check in on me when I see him and likes to ask how I'm doing. On that note, the reason, or one of the biggest reasons we started looking into anxiety is that one of the things that has helped me manage my symptoms the most is an anxiety pill or an SSRI. Now, the thing with these pills is that they do several different things, but one of the benefits of an anxiety pill, then there's plenty of side effects that are not good too, namely weight gain. But one of the positives is that they can increase your energy, and so considering my biggest issue is this constant level of oppressive fatigue, that's likely the reason why these anxiety meds are helping, is because they are boosting my energy and allowing me to have the energy to get out of bed, the energy to do a few dishes, so it's not a miracle, but it's helping keeping me out of bed. So that's why we looked into that. And actually, if you go online and you look up what are the best treatments for chronic fatigue syndrome, SSRIs or anxiety meds are going to be one of the top results you're going to find for managing symptoms. So they haven't really been able to figure out why that is yet, but like I said, chronic fatigue and long COVID, they overlap in a lot of areas. And so one of the good things about long COVID, I mean, it's not good, but the benefit that people are researching into long COVID is that it's actually kind of created a little bit more awareness of chronic fatigue syndrome because they overlap so much. And so hopefully the future for chronic fatigue syndrome is a little bit brighter, and that we hopefully will be able to find out some better treatment options. Now, my doc has recently referred me to a naturopath, and she has found several things recently. One of those things would be that she found a cytomegalovirus, which sounds kind of crazy until you learn that I think it's almost 60% of the population has a cytomegalovirus. And it's just that most of us are asymptomatic with that virus. It kind of sits there in your system, like for some people who have chickenpox and then later in life they get shingles. So that virus is still, it's in your body, but it's just not doing anything until it's triggered. And so she thinks that this cytomegalovirus was likely triggered at some point in the last 2 years. Now, we have no idea if that was triggered at the very beginning when my health issues started, or if it triggered somewhere later along the road. But right now, that is one of the things that we are treating. And she found a few other things too. She currently has me undergoing a pretty intensive detox for the next month. I'm hoping that a month from now I'll have some good news to share. We're trying to kill off a bunch of bad stuff, and so we're hoping that we might have some good news at the end of that tunnel. But I would really appreciate just your thoughts and prayers in regards to that. All right, I know that was a lot of information, but I hope that gives you a little bit of a picture of what's going on in my life and how my health is doing. And I guess basically, if I were to sum it all up really nicely, this is what I would say. I'm still in a place where we are looking for answers. We're trying different treatments. Yeah, I didn't even I didn't even come close to listing all the things that we've tried this year. We are constantly researching, talking to new docs, and trying to figure out ways to get better. I've made lots of changes in my lifestyle and diet, and my wife and I have been working on trying to reduce the amount of chemicals in our home. My wife's been doing a little bit more from scratch cooking and baking and things like that. And so we're trying everything we can to try and boost my health as much as we can. But definitely we're still we're not in the worst of it, but we're definitely still in the thick of it. Sometimes I think one of the hardest things for me is, I hop in front of this camera. I've been doing this a lot recently with my YouTube channel, and I talk about my health and, chronic disease and things like that. And I think it's very easy for me to come on the camera, and I think, I'm guessing from an outside perspective, I look relatively well. It's definitely a challenge. It's something that I think is hard to explain, and so if you're watching this and if you've had any doubts about what I'm going through, I just want to hopefully reach out to you and say that, like, hey, like, what I'm battling with, it is very real. I know it's not a very visible illness, but it's very real. It's affected me in so many ways. and I very much look forward to getting better. I'm trying everything I can to find ways to improve my health. I guess I'm just trying to say that it is very real, and I know it doesn't always look like it, but I thank you guys for your continued prayers and support, and just thank you for everyone coming alongside me through this journey. So I really appreciate it. All right, and I know this video is getting pretty lengthy, but there's a few final things I want to say. This road for the last 2 years that my family and I have been on has definitely been difficult and has challenged us in so many ways. But there's been a lot of really amazing things that have happened as well. And so I wanted to highlight a few of those things. So first and foremost, for both myself and my wife, Rosalind, we both feel like our faith in Christ has been tested in so many ways. I feel like our trust in him has really grown. We've been able to see him provide for us through family and friends. We've seen him just, allow the right person to show up at the right time when we needed help. And it's just been really cool for us to be able to see how God has chosen to use this season in so many ways in our own personal lives. And so that's been really cool for us to see. Secondly, I have been able to spend more time with my kids, with my wife, with my parents, and even my grandparents. And so, that's been really fun for me, especially because before this happened, I was the primary income. I was gone a lot for work, and so it's been nice to be able to be home. I don't get to interact with my kids in the way I want to. I'd love to take them to the park every day and get outside and play, so I can't always do those things, but I get to be with them, watch them grow, and support them in whatever ways I can. So that's been a lot of fun for me to be able to participate in that way. Now, thirdly, although my church attendance has decreased, I feel like there's been growth in other areas. So I still have my small group that still meets pretty much weekly. I'm not able to attend all of them, but I still have that community of believers around me, at least in a small context. And then just last month, actually, my cousin and we finished a 1 year Bible plan together. And so that was super cool. That was the first time either of us had read through the whole Bible in a year. It was a great growing experience, and we liked it so much that we actually started a second one just last month. And so that's been really cool that, despite all this chaos in life, to be able to have that new accomplishment in my life was pretty exciting. And finally, although my wife really misses being at home with the kids and being the stay-at-home parent, my health issues have forced her into a full-time work position, but she has landed in the industry of her dreams, and she's really starting to feel like she's growing her portfolio in that industry. She's having a lot of fun with it, which has been really cool to see. I'm glad to see her thriving in a work environment that she loves. So, what am I saying? Basically, I'm saying that although the last few years have been tough in a lot of different ways, life goes on. I'm not the only person in the world that is sick. There's so many people dealing with all kinds of different things. The season for our family has definitely had its challenges, but it's also been very it's also been a blessing in so many different ways too. And so I'm very grateful for all my friends and family who are supporting me and fighting through this with me. And it's been, I don't know if I want to use the word good, but it's been good for our family, I guess, if that makes sense. It's been a good growing time for us. Now that said, we all look forward to the day that it ends. But I think that it has been good to learn a little bit about perseverance and learn a little bit about having to fight through difficult situations. I think that it's good for all of us to have to battle with something in life, because it gives you, helps you relate better with others. And from my perspective, God has continued to reveal Himself as Lord and Savior and provider in so many different ways. And if I could steal a line from Torrin Wells, he has a song where he says that He's Lord of the hills and of the valleys, and I feel like that's been so apparent for me in these last couple of years. There's days where I feel a little bit of the highs, and then I feel a lot of the lows. And through all of that, God is constant, and He has sustained us through all of it. So I hope that may be an encouragement to you as well if you're battling through something. Now, as I close up, some of you may be wondering if there's any way you could support Rosalind and I at this point. And I think what I would say to that is I don't really know what we could ask for anymore at this point. We have been given so much by so many people through finances, through prayer. There's really nothing else I could ask for. We've been blown away, and we've been very blessed by all the support that we have received. So thank you all very much for helping our family go through this time. Now, with that said, I'll leave a few ways that you can support us if you wanted to, and those three ways are going to be: number one, prayer. Never underestimate the power of prayer. God hears our prayers, and He is faithful to hear them and to answer them. And so our family will never turn down prayers, and we appreciate all of you who are continuing to pray for us through this season. Number two, this may sound a little weird, but we would really appreciate it if you were willing to take a little bit of time to look into chronic fatigue syndrome and try to get a better understanding of what the disease actually is. I think that would help not just me, but anyone else who's dealing with it, just so we can help try to spread a little bit more awareness about what this disease is and what it actually looks like. Maybe this sounds a little harsh coming from me, but one of the things that's been the most challenging to when it comes to discussing my health with people is that when you mention chronic fatigue syndrome, pretty much everyone responds with, "Oh yeah, like I'm tired all the time too," or "Oh yeah, like I've got tons of fatigue as well," And so there's there's definitely a disconnect. Chronic fatigue is very real, and as I've watched more people on the internet who have dealt with it, my story is by no means the worst. I'm probably somewhere in the middle in terms of the severity of my symptoms. There's a guy I follow on YouTube who he ended up he was about my age, and had to move home with his grandparents, and his grandparents would spoon feed him every day and help him go to the bathroom. So chronic fatigue, it's not just like you woke up tired. It is an extreme level of tired, and the off and on switch is like that. I mean, you can go from feeling fine, 1 minute, and then 30 minutes later, you can be flat on your back. If you're willing and you have a little bit of time on your hands, maybe consider looking into it. Not necessarily for my sake, but for the sake of in the future, if you know of someone else who has it, you'll have a better idea of what they're going through. And then lastly, if you would be so kind as to like my YouTube video, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoy it. What I typically do on this channel is I talk a little bit about my own health issues, but I also like to talk about chronic disease and chronic health issues in general. And in the new year, I'm hoping to focus a little bit more on the fitness side of things in regards to what does that look like while battling with a chronic illness. If that's interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you join the community or at least share it with your friends. I'm definitely trying to grow this channel. There's not a whole lot I can do at home because of my illness, but one thing I can do is I can sit in front of a camera and I can talk. That's one thing I I haven't lost yet. I can still annoy people with my voice. So, but yeah, anyway, I'd really appreciate it if you could support me in that way. All right, and that should do it for this video, my friends. I want to thank you so much for spending part of your day here with me. And to all my family and friends who might be watching this, thank you so much again for all your support. And to everyone else, thank you as always for being here. Please take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. I'm praying for your health. God bless you, and we shall see you in the next one.